It's time for another sit down and talk episode of Butt Crack Cycles. Our topic today is Harley collectors and their impact on the vintage Harley marketplace and also vintage Harley culture. I hear this kind of stuff sometimes where people are like, this group of people is ruining Harleys or that group of people is ruining Harleys, and it's sometimes interesting to talk about. Though, like many of my episodes where we're just kind of doing a shop talk is what I call it. What we're doing now. I'm sitting down, giving you my opinions, ranting and raving, whatever. These are episodes that I don't just pull a topic out of the hat. A lot of times I have conversations with multiple people over multiple weeks or multiple months. And the episodes sort of organically form, you know? I'll have a conversation with somebody, and then a few weeks later have a similar conversation with somebody else, and then someone will send me a message on Instagram, or someone will leave a comment on YouTube, and slowly the thought starts to form in my head, and the light bulb goes off when I say, Paul, this is a topic that people care about and want to talk about. And that's when I start spitballing ideas to get to this point where I'm finally ready to sit down in a chair, turn the camera on, and talk with y'all. So, Harley collectors. Who are they? What are they buying? What do I define a collector as? And, you know, is it killing Harley culture? Is it killing the Harley hobby? Is it destroying the market for the rest of us, just regular people? Shorter answer is no. I don't think so. Not at all. Not slightly. Not in one bit. And I have absolutely no grudges held against someone who's collecting these old bikes. So this episode actually gets its start with a YouTube comment from somebody y'all probably know. Corey, over at Saddle Tramp. I don't even remember what episode he commented on of mine. He wrote a comment that was something along the lines of, dude, I remember a shirt I saw at a rally years ago, and it said, God created knuckleheads to keep rich boys off shovelheads. I thought it was really funny. I hadn't heard or seen that one before, and so I looked it up, and sure enough, there were old shirts of it, but no one was selling them, so I real quickly threw together a design. I printed a shirt, I sent it to Corey. Here he is wearing it. Side note, if you want to grab one of these shirts, buttcrackcycles.com. If you don't like this shirt, there's other shirts on there too. Got to do some shameless self-promotion when you work for yourself. And so I sent Corey the shirt, and he calls me, and he's like, dude, I got the shirt. I love it. It's funny. I can't wait to wear it. I'm going to wear it to this show and that show. And he's like, thanks for making it, dude. And I was like, thanks for the idea. And that's where this all kind of started. He and I had spent some time on the phone talking, you know, just like about how do we get to this point in old Harley land where your regular person can't afford a knucklehead or an early rigid frame panhead or like the big inch 74, 80 inch flatheads. How did we get there? And what does it mean for all of us who love old Harleys? And then a little later, I had similar conversations with other people. I was over at my buddy Paul's house, who is a Harley collector and has gotten to be a good friend of mine. It's somebody I like hanging out with and have a lot in common with. And I was helping him work on one of his bikes. It's a 38 UL. We were doing some electrical work. We were working on handlebars. And he's like, dude, have you ever thought about doing a flathead? And I'm like, yeah, I'd love to do a flathead project. Maybe we can find a really cheap basket case. Like, he's really good at sniffing out deals on this really old stuff. And maybe it could be something I have on this channel. I said, but that's going to have to wait, you know, till I have some more money in the future. And I made the joke to him. I was like, dude, you know, I should have been buying knuckleheads and flatheads and rigid frame panheads instead of going to kindergarten. And we both kind of laughed about it. And, do I think my buddy's ruining things for me? Absolutely not. He's just experiencing Harleys in his way, and I'm experiencing them in my way. And I think you're going to find that that's the point of this episode, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. And then I had a conversation on Instagram with someone here recently where he put on his story a picture of an old bill of sale from Walter Call up there in New York, where his buddy's dad had bought I think it was a 42 WLA for like $642, I think is what it was after tax in 1975, which is just so cheap. Yes, I get that was a lot of money in 75, but if you real quickly do some inflation calculations, that's like $4,000 today. And I know someone will say, well, that was still a lot of money back then, but the point is, I've dug through some of my uncle's old paperwork, and you know, my panhead I inherited from him. He bought for $200 in the late 60s. That's like less than $2,000 now if you account for inflation from say 1968 till 2025. And if I've learned anything on YouTube, it's that you can lead a horse to water, you can't make them drink. I can sit here and show inflation calculation numbers. We could talk about median household income in, say, 50 years ago, 1975, and median household income versus median home price and average groceries cost and what a brand new Harley costs in 75 and blah, 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 and compare all of that today in 2025. And you could make a very, very good case that your dollar goes way further in the 70s than it does now. And someone would still say, you just don't get it, you weren't there, that was so much money back then. I hear what you're saying, but the value of these old Harleys has significantly outpaced inflation and has made it where if your regular working class person's income is down here, average super old Harley prices are like, way up there. And has made this stuff basically unobtainable for somebody who's working a job making $40 or $60 or even $80,000 a year. To go buy a $25,000 or $30,000 panhead, never mind a $40,000 or $50,000 knucklehead, is completely out of any responsible and realistic financial reach for what I call regular middle class folks. So if those of us who are, in that kind of level of income can't buy this stuff, what are the people who can buy this stuff buying? And what are they doing with it? And what does this mean for the market? And what does this mean for all of us who love old Harleys? Seems like to me, from the outside looking in and sometimes getting to deal with these guys and be in that circle just a teeny tiny little bit, that the bikes that these guys are going after are rigid frame panheads, knuckleheads, and flatheads. And then when you get away from that, that's like kind of, I think, tier one, the top tier of bikes that are being collected. And then when you get away from that, maybe like tier two, you're looking at duo glide panheads, so swing arm panheads, and then generator shovel heads. Basically, pre-AMF bikes. I think there's a pretty good reason for that. Obviously the AMF stuff gets a pretty bad stigma, a bad reputation. I've talked about the AMF year Harleys on this channel a lot. We're not really going to get into that today. But there are a lot of people who don't want an AMF bike just because of that stigma. There's also a lot of people who think that, like, say, on the big twins, on the shovel heads, that the cone head shovels, the cone shovels, that those just don't look as cool. They don't look right. If it's not a slab side, if it's not a flat side, it's not a real Harley. And that's, just like an aesthetic choice, I guess. I don't know. Whatever. It's not saying that cone shovels and AMF year bikes aren't valuable. They are. They're more expensive and more desirable and more valuable than, say, an Evo big twin. It's just that the pre-AMF stuff seems to be what's really, really collectible right now. And it seems like a lot of guys are buying these bikes either in one of two conditions. The first is that they want an all-original bike. Something unmolested, untouched, set in a barn or whatever, or even just a survivor, like something that was ridden and used, but it was fairly well taken care of. It can have some patina, it can have a little rust, it can be missing a little paint. It doesn't have to be perfect, just so long as it's original and numbers matching. And the more history and provenance that bike has, paperwork and such that comes with it, original bills of sales and things like that, adds to the value of those bikes. And these are bikes that guys are buying and then either just not touching them, just leaving them as they find them and pushing them into the garage, or they'll go through them and get them ready to run and ride, but they're going to try and keep it as original as possible, reuse as many of the original parts as possible, and if they have to replace a part, they're going to only do so with an original Harley part, especially something that sort of matches whatever patina is going on the bike. So that's kind of the first kind of bikes I think these guys are buying. And the second kind of bikes that I think are being bought by collectors are like basket cases, and then they're taking them and restoring them. So they bring a pile of parts to a known, reputable Harley restoration shop, write them a check, drop off the bike, come back in 6 months, and now it's been painted, it's been put together, everything's done right, very detail oriented. The shops need to be someone, like I said, that has a known, established name in the Harley restoration world, and where everything's very well documented, so that then the bike is ready to go. It's rideable, running, riding, everything's perfect on it. And then it can, you know, sit in the garage or go around the block once a month on a Sunday for a quick 5 or 6 mile ride or whatever it might be. And when they go to sell it, they have all this documentation, again, that so-and-so built the motor, so-and-so did the paint. So those are kind of the two big classes of bikes that I think the collectors are going after. And for the most part, this is stuff that just sits around. These are investments. And honestly, I can't really blame the guys, like, in all seriousness. It's one thing to throw a leg over a $3,000 or $4,000 iron head or a $5,000 shovel head and go rip it across the country, or even just go up the street with it. It's another thing to go ride a $30,000 panhead, knowing that some idiot with no insurance on their phone might run through a red light and just wipe the bike out, or you might hit a deer or whatever it might be. So, like, I get it. I can't necessarily say that that's what I would do with a bike if I had a bike like that. But it doesn't mean that they're doing it wrong. It just means that they're taking care of their investment in the way that they feel like will protect it and allow it to grow and mature the most. And I can't really fault anyone for that. You know, like, is it what I would do? No. Is it what many people on this channel would do? No. Do I get why people do it? Absolutely. Do I think it's ruining the hobby? Not really. And I think that's kind of the point you'll find that I'm trying to make in this video. While the collectors are doing things differently than how I do it, and how many other people who watch this channel do it, I don't think that this is a bad thing. At the end of the day, everyone is just experiencing life and experiencing Harleys in their own way. Everyone on this planet is living for the very first time. Nobody knows what they're doing. Like the old Whose Line Is It Anyways show said, everything's made up and the points don't matter. Anyone who tells you that they know everything and have it all figured out is a liar. And so, you know, I have to remind myself of this sometimes, because I'm guilty of this. And I've been guilty of this on this channel, of, you know, sitting there looking at people who are experiencing old Harleys in a different way than me. Just because somebody's never been thrashing on a bike literally on the side of the road to get off of the side of the road in the middle of a road trip doesn't mean they don't love vintage Harleys. Again, we all love the same thing, and I think in life, as with old Harleys, the more time you spend with people and the more time you interact with people, the more you'll find that we have things in common. And that the guy who owns one old bike, and it's a $1,500 iron head that, you know, is 7 different shades of paint, and it leaks oil, and it sometimes leaves them on the side of the road, can probably sit down with the guy who owns a restored knucklehead, and those guys will both share a similar passion for old motorcycles, or just motorcycles in general, and have more in common than they have different. And that's true in just about anything in life, whether it's politics or whatever. I find that when I speak to people who are different than me, that at first glance you might say, I don't have anything in common with this guy. When you actually sit down and talk to them, a lot of times you do. And it's easy to lose sight of that as we sit here and try and classify people into collectors or riders or vintage or old school. And people would get into that in my video comments about, well, you said it's a vintage Harley, but it's only a 1980 something, and true vintage really means 19 blah, 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 blah. Well, actually, as they push up their glasses and be pedantic. At the end of the day, we all love old bikes, and we're all doing this differently. Does it kind of suck that we can't all play with the really old stuff? Does that suck? A little bit, yeah, but it is how it is. I'm not going to sit here and BS you and tell you, oh, you should just work harder. If you want it, you should work harder, and then you'll get to have a $50,000 knucklehead too, because I understand there's a lot of people who work really, really, really hard and will never be able to have that. I'm probably one of them. And that's fine. Do I think this is ever going to change? Do I think this is ever going to end? Will the bottom ever fall out on this marketplace? I don't know. Y'all can tell me. I kind of think no. Here's my reasons. They only made so many of them. They aren't making any more of them. The people who have them know what they're worth. The value seems to steadily be going up on this stuff. And unlike some other things where obviously markets are cyclical if they go up and down, but look at things like old Fords, like Model A's and Model T's. Those, like 15 years ago, were really expensive. And now they are dirt cheap. The boomers, the hot rod guys who wanted like 68, 67, 68, 70, muscle cars, weren't really interested in that antique cars, Model T's, Model A's. It was guys older than the baby boomers. Those people have died. And so they've been left to their kids, whether it's boomers, Gen Xers, millennials, whatever, who aren't really that into Model A's and Model T's. So then what happened to that market is the bottom has just fallen out of it. That stuff is dirt cheap. I don't necessarily know, though, that that's going to happen with the really old Harleys. Rigid frame panheads, knuckleheads, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of young people who are into that stuff. You go on social media, you go on Instagram, there's a lot of guys my age who are building knucklehead choppers. And whether it's because they're trust fund kids or they work a tech job where they have a really, huge salary or whatever it might be, there's plenty of young folks out there who are still buying this really old stuff. I think I've talked about this some in some other videos. I think that for many people who are younger, say 20s, 30s, 40s, the draw for this is that a lot of these folks have white collar jobs. They were sitting in a cubicle at an office, or they're working from home, and they're knocking down $200,000 or $300,000 a year, some ungodly salaries. And then they want an old bike. Like, they're into bikes, they're into Harleys, they want that Americana, they want that, even if it's just on the weekend, and that's fine. So they go buy an old panhead and they bring it to someone to build the engine and put it together and build a chopper out of it, and then they get to go get their little piece of freedom machine. I talk about this all the time on this channel, that Harleys, motorcycles in general, but Harleys specifically, are like the great freedom machine, right? Like, we as a culture, as a country, have attached that to them in our cultural lexicon, and that's awesome. And so I don't really care if I'm riding down the road with a guy who works a tech job and makes more in a quarter than I make in a year, and we're both going together down the road together to the same motorcycle show together to go have fun together, doing something we love together. I don't care. I'm not any better than that guy just because when his bike breaks, he doesn't know how to fix it. He's going to look at me and say, "Paul, can you help me fix my bike?" Yes, I'm going to help him fix his bike. And then we're going to go to the camp out or the show or the rally or whatever together. And, I'm going to take some pictures and he's going to drink some beers or whatever it might be. And we're going to have fun because we both love the same thing. We might be coming at it from slightly different perspectives. We might be coming at it from different financial means, but we're still there together. That's what matters. Don't let anybody else tell you that. Don't let anybody tell you that this person's killing Harleys, that person's killing Harleys. I hear it all the time. Millennials are ruining Harleys. Gen Z's ruining Harleys. Collectors are ruining Harleys. Boomers are ruining Harleys. Harley's gonna die. Nobody cares. No one wants to do it. Blah, 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 blah. So, do I wish that I could own an old knucklehead? Sure. Does it make me jealous to walk into someone's garage and see a whole row of them just sitting there basically as, mechanical investments? Not really. I think people should go ride their bikes. I think bikes are meant to be ridden and get dirty and break and get fixed and be experienced that way. That's how I experience old Harleys. But if someone else wants to experience old Harleys, if the thrill of it for them is finding a numbers matching 36 UL and then restoring it and then showing it off in its restored shape and never really actually going to ride that thing, that's fine too. It's not how I do it, but it doesn't mean that how I do it is more valid than how they do it. We're just doing the same thing or similar things differently, and that's kind of what life's all about, right? We have more in common than we do in different. And I think it's nice to just remind yourself of that sometimes. I don't think collectors are ruining the hobby. The hobby is whatever you make it. Go make it whatever makes you happy. Go experience vintage Harleys in whatever way it makes you happy. It's nice to grow. It's nice to learn. It's nice to change. It's nice to make a video like this and then maybe come back to it in a year, and I'm sure my perspective on this will be slightly different because I've made similar videos a year or 2 or 3 years ago, and my perspective now is different than it was then. As always, thanks for watching. I hope y'all enjoyed sitting here while I ramble. Always look forward to your thoughts in the comments below. Go ride your bike if you have an old bike. Go fix your bike if you have an old bike and it's sitting around broke. Go do whatever it is that makes you happy to say, I own an old Harley. Bye. See you next time.